animals could talk, which species do you think would be the meanest animal and why?
Sounds like you've met my cat. My cat is really mean. If you haven't met my cat, she's lovely, honestly. God forbid she ever sees a video of this, she'd tear me to pieces. Hey everyone, I'm Phil. I work for a company called Mux. I've been building video infrastructure for the last 13, 14 years now at the BBC, at Bright Cove, and then at Mux. And I've spent the last 6 months pretty much just working on AI things and vibe coding my way through life. So I'm actually doing something because I'm vibe coding all the time.
Hi, I'm Maria Ingold, and cats. Love cats. They're the best, most cutest, lethal killers on the planet, right? Awesome. My furniture will attest to that. I've been working in media tech for over 30 years. Oh my gosh. And I'm the former CTO of a Disney Sony JV, so I built Filmplex movies way back. And then former global VP of Solution Engineering for Synamedia. There are a few Synamedia people here. Hello. And most recently, I've been doing a Master's of Science in Artificial Intelligence, which I've just completed. And I have a distinction. I'm very pleased. Anyway, that was all on mapping AI in media. And so what I've done is 3 things. I have built a new value chain called Create, Enrich, Deliver, and Engage. I have built a taxonomy, and I have used that taxonomy to drive large language model classification. That means we can compare and contrast, find opportunities and gaps in the market. I can start building an RFI, RFP matchmaking to match people who are having problems in the business to AI solutions and the companies that solve them. And we can start talking about it publicly, because we cannot solve AI alone. We must do it collectively.
Awesome, that sounds great. Hello everyone, my name is Josh Lomas, Solutions Architect at Pixitmedia. I deliver media storage solutions for file-based workflows. And to answer your question, I think mountains would probably be the meanest.
Alright, so my name's Jake Arends. I'm a product manager at Bitmovin, so I look after our playback and AI products. I was a fellow Bristolian up until a couple of months ago when I decided to get a new house and get a new human and get a new dog. Who I say would definitely be in that. She is tenacious, to say the least, and she's about this big. So that's why. So that's fine.
Thanks, guys. I just want to give a mention to squirrels. I've got a bit of child trauma with squirrels, so I think they'd be right up there. Yeah, they're overrated. Right, so kind of what I really want to get out of this panel is kind of to get a grasp on kind of tangible use cases. I know you guys can't tell us too much in terms of customers. This is all a bit hush-hush, but I just kind of want some examples, and also to kind of get out of this and to understand what is not a commodity right now and what is actually valuable in terms of use cases. It's a very broad question. I thought I'd start very broad, and maybe we'll zoom in as we progress. So we'll start at the other end again from Phil, please.
Totally. I think the number one area we're going to see, or we already see, our customers leveraging AI is for classification, for moderation, and for accessibility are probably the biggest 3. So kind of any form of understanding of video, AI has kind of taken that from a very simple world, a very simplistic view of kind of object recognition, to kind of inferring meaning from a video. I'm sure all of us have tried throwing a handful of thumbnails and a VTT file into ChatGPT and seen, hey, actually this is a pretty good, if I ask it for a title for a video, if I ask it for a description, this is actually pretty good. We see tons of people productizing that across all sorts of kind of LLMs, and I think that bridge between I've got a video and I want to generate things about the video. I want to do things like generate captions, translate the captions. I want to create artificial voices in a bunch of languages. Is kind of going to end up being the bread and butter of what people build with AI. We work with companies like Substack and Patreon, who also are UGC companies, right? There's a huge amount of, that is a lot of where the growth is, to the point of a bunch of your conversations tonight. Like, it's not going to be about traditional media. Like, the growth in media is a lot of the time the growth in user-generated content, and yes, platforms like Substack, Patreon, Strava, who generate these phenomenal amounts of video, but often have no idea what's in it. Is it safe? Is it something you can actually put in front of someone? Is it something you can safely put an advert against? So being able to say, hey, this is safe for work content, it doesn't discuss not safe for work concepts or things like that, and AI can really help us infer understanding and meaning from those videos. And that's something we see a huge amount of uptake on.
Maria, is there any value beyond captions? I'm on the target, excited.
I'm really excited about captions.
Yeah. So in the work I've been doing, I've come up with so far 155 use cases of AI in media. I'm only just starting. There will be more. But I will also be refining that. And so I'm trying to map it to actual products in our industry. So that'll create a comprehensive picture of everything. As far as use cases, so yesterday I was speaking at the Future of TV Advertising. And I thought there's a good use case that's come up that ITV, Channel 4 are doing at the moment. And they're trying to get advertisers who are new to television, so people who are not currently advertising, who have run out of what they can gain from social media. They have reached their peak of the number of people who are doing TV advertising, so they're trying to get these new people on. They're small to medium enterprises, but they don't have budgets. So how do you get people to perceive the value of this? And they're using a company called Magnite, a product called Streamer.ai. And what that's doing is actually building in rules into the model for creation, but also for feedback. And so you've got it Clearcast compliant by the time that you finish it. So these types of things, and thinking that level of things through, not just saying, hey, we can do this. And they had a nice demo of showing it. So the Channel 4 one is out. It's very animated. It's a shopping trolley going around. And then it's a podcast about shopping in grocery markets. But the ITV one that they showed was for a steakhouse in Manchester. And that uses Veo 3, but it can also use other versions of Veo. And it does sort of 15 to 30 second clips. And you put in your assets, so it's your assets, it's copyright approved music, copyright approved voiceover, and so you don't have those issues to consider. And then what the values that then it animates it, so it uses Veo 3 to do the animation of it, so it looks like actually a reasonably good quality ad for, I think it's sub 1,000. And so that gets a whole new people onto it. It doesn't take away from the creatives in-house. It's incremental, and it provides new opportunities for an industry that has had some decline. So I think that's a really good use case.
This is Magnite and ITV.
It's Magnite is bought Streamer.ai, and it's missing an E, right? And it's ITV's using it and Channel 4 is using it, right? And so it's a partnership with them. So I think that's a really neat, practical use case.
Very cool.
And it's for generative AI, and that's the area that everybody's scared of, and yet this is the thing that's
Did that
actually...
come up in your research, or was that something you just found out yesterday at the conference?
No, I'd known about it prior to this, and it's building on, so they had sort of proof of concept last year, and it's building on that work that they did before, because they needed to have something new. They didn't want to hurt their existing creatives, right? You want to grow your business, and this is getting sort of that more long tail growth into the company. It's one of the best use cases I've seen that seems thought through from the different angles around regulation, maintaining jobs, and adding incremental growth to a company.
Cool, thank you. Josh, I forgot what the original question was.
Yeah, likewise, mate. I mean, I think I'll just focus on value and where we're actually using AI as a useful tool. As Pixit, we're not just offering the storage hardware as our primary solution. What good are 100 terabytes or so worth of assets if you can't actually leverage them? So we've actually built a useful AI tool around Arends that can actually make those assets particularly useful. If we focus on the likes of keyword generation and also audio transcription as well, we're actually turning these assets that would essentially remain idle and actually turning them into something that you can leverage and monetize.
Sounds like a similar story I'm about to tell. So at Bitmovin, for the background, so our focus is on the we'll call AI scene analysis, which is basically that kind of extracting that metadata from content for media services. And I think kind of all the things we talked about before kind of apply here, and something I find very exciting. I think when you talk about commodity, I think it's what can someone inside of one of these companies just go and do, throw into ChatGPT, for example. Super easy to get object detection, right? But there's some other things which are a little bit harder, require a little bit more thought, a little bit more work. It then becomes very much like a build versus buy conversation, same as we would see with open source versus commercial anyway. But there's a horde of use cases that we talked about before about like advertising, contextual advertising, optimizing for ad times, highlight generation, improving things like search and recommendations. For me there's a horde of things which you can apply to, and when it comes down to customer use cases, I think it kind of to echo what was on previous panels, it always comes down to what is important to a customer at that point in time. Sometimes it's something super simple. It's like, we just want to automate the skip intro and up next time on our user experience, for example. Like that's a great use case, something that we can achieve quite easily. All the way up to how do you go and kind of loop in your recommendation engine with your subscriber management engine with your advertising engine to then go and do custom session based ad scheduling, for example. It's contextual and personalized. There's hordes of things, and I think that's probably what's most exciting about it.
So is that the reason you don't tell people like me about the use cases? Because most of the time it's so simple and boring that there's no point.
I talk about the use cases all the time. They're very very open, so yeah.
Okay. So this is the big wrap up, and one of the biggest turns of this year, of course, was MCP. Phil's already laughing. Which was launched in November last year, so it's 13 months old. And what blows my mind is that this was, 5 minutes ago, this was the best thing since sliced bread. It was amazing. Everyone was talking about it. Some people are still trying to understand what it is and what it does. And now other people are saying it's just a trivial exercise, and it's technology that kicks the can down the road and makes certain things other people's problems. So just help me try and understand how can it be moving this quickly. Phil, I know you have an opinion on this.
My opinions on MCP are going to be spicy. Apologies in advance. Did you know, I think it was yesterday, MCP protocol was donated to the Linux Foundation, if memory serves. I think it was literally just yesterday, maybe day before. But which is crazy to consider that, a protocol that was created last year is now already considered so critical that we need the Linux Foundation to take this over. MCP is we jumped on this one pretty early, and we had, I think, like a lot of people do, like a generative process for taking API definitions and turning them into SDKs and things like that, or even just documentation. And that kind of lends itself to hey, I can make an MCP server really easy from here. And I think a lot of people jumped on that train and just did that, and then it turns out that's not actually useful, or it's not what's actually useful to a large language model. I went to an event in central London about 6 months ago, and let's try it here, because I'm interested to see whose opinion is here. Who is an MCP server for? Is it for the human who's using the LLM, or is the MCP server for the LLM itself? Show of hands. Who thinks it's for the human? Who thinks it's for the LLM? Yeah. Interestingly, 6 months ago, opposite answer. People kind of thinking, well, it's a human who's driving the LLM, therefore it's going to do what the human says. No, the LLM is actually working out what tool to use, whether that's the right tool to use. Yeah, you're saying use the MUX tool, but you're not necessarily saying use, this tool to go hit this API or whatever. There's also been this very quick realization that a large set of tools is not like the way to structure an LLM, an MCP server, and that quickly kind of blows up your context window. You've put too much information in it, and sure, we've all seen this, but you actually kind of need a tool that tells you what tool you should then downstream use, which is in itself kind of crazy. But yeah, I think MCP servers were kind of this great moment, yes, for I want to get my LLM to do something. It's far less useful from like I want to build something using AI perspective, like build something maintainable, predictable, that does consistent things. That is not an MCP server. That is something completely different. It can still leverage some of the same underlying technology, but it is not an MCP server. It's great for like one-offs when you're going through a chatbot or something. It's much less useful when you are actually building kind of a productionized workflow on top of an LLM.
Maria, everyone must have just started to build MCP servers like in the middle of your masters, right? Did that throw a spanner in the works?
Well, with what we're doing, we have to code from the ground up in Python as part of a master's, right? You don't sort of go off and use like an MCP server with various modules to build something. You have to build it all by hand. So we work, but one of the things we did study, of course, is agentic AI in general. And you can't just sort of go, agentic is going to solve everything, or an MCP server is going to solve everything. It has a specific use case. And what I have seen is just a lot of people in industry just acting like it's a magic solution. And it isn't. Do you have a workflow you want to do something with, right? And so, and it's thinking that through, and then when you're building something, you need to think through, could this go off and wildly do something that's going to cost me a lot of money without any sort of, human in the loop constraints here? So, there's still a lot to think through, and I think the problem is people throw AI terminology around, this is part of why I did the master's, without understanding what it means. And I think the really important thing is to understand that there are different types. AI is a bucket, right? There's a lot of different things in there. There's machine learning, there's deep learning, there's, generative AI, there's, using agents, there's all of these different things, and they all solve different problems. So I think the important thing is to understand what you're trying to solve, and if agentic is the right way to do it, and then if using Media Cloud Protocol, MCP is the right one to use. Sorry, my MCP user. I hate acronyms. Anyway, okay, yeah. There you are.
We're not on COVID anymore, it's all
I
right.
mean, I'm probably not the right individual to elaborate on that and provide an opinion, but more so question it, and that be, is there a current place and future for MCPs going forward? Potentially yes, but in what circumstance? Whether it's based around LLM or whether it's human operator driven. But then equally, just to touch on your point there with regards to existing confusion based around what already exists as an application, and then just referencing that as AI, because all of a sudden it's a trend to reference products. I think we need to provide an understanding and a clear explanation of the two, purely from a consumer level as well, because if you're confusing the fact that an existing application is based around AI, but it in actual reality is not, then your expectation is going to differ wildly to what the realistic result is, essentially.
I'll have a slightly differing opinion, because whilst I agree that MCP sits in its place in kind of future agentic workflows and whatnot. And like kind of as Phil says, like it's not the be all and end all. It's not the panacea of what agentic is going to be. It's going to be something that fits into a workflow, and you're going to kind of use it. What I will say from a customer point of view and from a M&E point of view, right? So it's one thing that how fast things are moving, as you say, kind of MCP was only became a thing this year, and already it's kind of out the window. From an M&E point of view, as you say, some people are still learning what it is and still learning why it's useful. So, we see that, for example, like a huge use case is that, the fact that everyone is using an LLM in their day-to-day workflows, seemingly at the moment, right? So if you're using GPT, or if you're using Claude, or if you're using Gemini, or whatever, if you can now hook up a data set that you have, as an example, like to basically, use, so our analytics solution, for example, if you can then access that via an LLM and actually use it as a way to reason some of that data and go and query some of that, you've effectively enabled yourself to have a data scientist. That's where I see it is important, because it does enable that kind of, the use case is then that, if I had someone who, in a boardroom, there's been a reported issue about issues on iOS, for example. They have to go to the video engineering team, they have to go to their dashboard, they have to go find it. If someone actually wants to go and, they don't have time to talk to their, they have to build an API query or whatever, go and get the data. But if they can now just connect to an MCP server and just ask that question, oh, apparently something happened on iOS yesterday, what was going on? And you can have the LLM actually do that reasoning for you. That's huge. It kind of democratizes that whole entry point to the data. And additionally, if you can then connect that, as as is the point of MCP, to different tools and different data sets, then again, it becomes that superpower that you kind of use it day to day. So, whilst I agree it's not the be-all and end-all as what agents is, but it really does have its value. And, we're not even at a point where people are using that, fully in its full capabilities yet.
So the consensus seems to be that the more kind of focused and targeted the use case, the better the technology is. As soon as you sort of start to expand the horizons and it starts to hallucinate, right? And so how do we curtail that?
Sorry, I'm assuming you're then going back this way. Well, I mean, like, again, it's like anything. Like, it has to, as you say, it has to serve a use case. It has to serve a reason. You can't just, throw all your data in and throw your linear channels into an AI model and go, oh, make it better. You have to have, our CEO has a great analogy that, LLM models are just a really intelligent stranger on the street. Like, you still have to give them context. You still have to, like, build a workflow. At the end of the day, it's just a development tool. And, sometimes actually it is just better to build, a program that, in the traditional sense. There's almost the kind of like Dunning-Kruger effect of, oh, well, I can get out a really cool video now, so therefore I can do anything. But you still run into the vibe coding issues of, all the errors that you're going to hit, for example, when, it turns out you actually know nothing about software development, even though you think you do. So, it has to be super specific, and it has to always serve an ultimate goal and outcome. And again, I think that's where you end up focusing what the outputs are, and also putting the guardrails to make sure that it's not hallucinating.
Those guardrails are very much important. But to your point with regards to hallucination, essentially it's really going to happen with generative AI, but you have to focus on just how clearly defined and enriched that data is. If you look at, let's say, format extension or frame extension, for example, if you're taking a traditional 16:9 but then turning it into a 9:16, we're anticipating what that extended frame would look like. Now, if we don't have the correct data behind that, then of course you can provide erroneous information, and all of a sudden your frame is warped. Use that same example for particular data, whether it's video or graphic or just image generation, and of course you're going to have the hallucinations behind that. So I think in essence, the better the data, the better the result. So I think we're responsible for providing the best way of processing that data.
Yeah, and on that note, so when I was doing my research, people have heard of retrieval augmented generation, so RAG, right? This is one way to start preventing hallucinations by providing a set of information for the large language model to work within, right? There are other methods that are also out there. So there's another one called terminology augmented generation. This is now being used for if you were doing language translation of your really business-specific vocabulary. So you're translating and yet you have acronyms, the thing I hate the most. If you have lots of acronyms and things like that, and lots of terms, then there's a way of doing that now. And then what I did is taxonomy-driven classification. So again, you're giving it a framework to work within to give you answers. And so there are ways like this, and this, the taxonomy one, it's an emerging field. I didn't even know it existed until I did it, and now I'm seeing a couple other people who've done something this year too. But it's these types of things which are giving it that framework and the ability to go out and do sort of research and look on the web to verify from trusted sources, those kinds of things as well. So there are methods to start handling this better.
I think we're trying to fulfill AI for human interpretation, essentially, and that's where generative really comes into play.
Yeah. And so this is filtering it into a way that is appropriate for whatever it is, your use cases that you're trying to work with them. Yep, next door's now.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, I think there's an interesting point here between ensuring that anything you feed into like a model is large enough but not too large, right? Is a common kind of problem here. We all know that a model has like a context window, right? If you think about traditional it's a context window. You want to use kind of as much of that as you can without giving it too much information, right? Like a very simple example is like if you want to summarize a video, ideally you want to give it both text and imagery, right? Because, for example, maybe your video doesn't have any sound in it, or maybe your video doesn't have any audible words in it, right? So, like, if you're just looking at a video advert, it's just music and a bunch of sunglasses, it's a TV advert. To summarize that, you need imagery, right? And the more data points and the more kind of context you put in place, the better it's going to do, right? If you give it imagery and some text and some audio and scene detection, right? You're suddenly giving it kind of all these pieces it needs to make better decisions. And it's about doing that without going overboard, obviously. One thing we've spent a bunch of time on recently is eval frameworks. Is this familiar to people in the room? It's kind of a way of like trying to make sure that if you are building something on top of an LLM, that given a certain prompt and given a certain model, that you're kind of getting a reliable, consistent output, and that it's doing that within a kind of token spend that you're comfortable with, performance threshold that you're comfortable with. These are really important, and these are used internally when you build or train an LLM because you want to make sure that your output's been back consistent. And this is great when you are doing things like moving between different models on like large language providers. Like, hey, summarize this on, let's say, GPT Mini 5.1 compared to summarize this on Claude Sonnet 4.5, right? Very different models, very different cost constraints. But you want to make sure you get a consistent, reliable output.
What is that called?
Eval frameworks, like evaluation frameworks.
That's a new one.
Yeah, it's becoming a big part of. If you're building an AI app without using an eval framework, you're kind of living pretty dangerously. So
I'll give it 6 months.
Strain that in, restrain that. Yeah, we're being I'll be talking about HP 6 months ago. Eval frameworks today, but it's a way of trying to make sure that things are doing like a completely unpredictable like. LM's just maths, big number models, right? And it's about a way of trying to make sure that is consistent and predictable.
Okay. So Maria, this taxonomy, is it published? Where can we find it? Is it available yet?
It is published, but I haven't sort of publicly really talked about it yet. So what I'd like to do is there's a methodology by someone called Nickerson, which is essentially you start looking at the taxonomy and you make sure that there is a one-to-one mapping between the product and the use case. And I need to take it back to that. I've got about 300 more companies, maybe 400 by this time, I don't know, they keep growing, to evaluate, and I'm only taking public information, and if you're not actually talking about AI on your website, I'm assuming you're not doing it. So you might want to be a little bit more public about what you're doing. And so it will be out there. It is public. It's under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, non-derivation license. The reason that it's out there for that is that I would like to commercialize it. I could license it to other people, but it's going to be public for the purpose of academia to do future research, and for us as everybody who's interested in the success of this industry to be able to collaborate together, because we cannot all learn everything about AI. The only way that we're going to move forwards with AI is to collaborate as people.
Yes.
Great point. And on that note, people, does anyone have any questions for our panel? Yes.
Of course it does.
Uh-oh.
Should we just give her a microphone permanently?
Okay, you guys like to talk about AI. Can you please describe your autonomy level of what you've been doing on the AI in your work? The autonomy level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, Tesla level 3, fully automatic.
Right, is that autonomy level? Yes,
Yeah.
the one that derives from automotive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'd like to
So
know
0 is fully person, and then 5 is fully
No,
automated.
level 0 is the one big formula you in person or software define the how to handle the situation. 2 is whatever you try to make it learn, and then you give a guidance. 3 is the totally autonomy. For them, you give a planning target to reach your objective. 4 is automatically the planning.
So this, hello. It's, so, I mean, where I am with things is everything needs a human
Tommy.
only.
We lost our host. Your question was too long, Keith.
He does not know the answer.
Right. So, for me, the work that I'm doing definitely still needs a human in the loop. Right? You need that level of quality check and sanity check. But what I was finding is that I make mistakes, it makes mistakes. Together we're better. And it ties in with the other type of classification research I was seeing using large language models. So the BBC was also saying that its journalists didn't originally like it giving back so many different, tags for what it was doing, but they ultimately used more tags as a result. And it's the same kind of thing that I'm seeing in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you guys use PPO?
I need acronyms.
Proximal policy
Anyone else with a question?
Is the AI bubble going to burst?
Yes.
If no, why do you think no? If yes, what are you doing to prevent it from affecting your work and your corner of the industry as much as possible?
Well, I think, look, let's define what that bubble is, essentially. Let's define what that bubble is, essentially, because if we're using AI to provide a better value from original context, then no, and it's only going to improve going forward. However, if it's limited to what we're using, based around the content that we're providing, then yes, ultimately that will run dry. But yeah, overarching answer to your question is no, I don't think it will. And I don't think we're in a bubble.
I'm in a bubble, yes. I talk to a lot of investors. I get a lot of pitch decks. We're part of Y Combinator. You guys go through Y Combinator too. We get all of the demo day recordings, and we see 150 startups going through Y Combinator last week, and 145 of them were agentic AI something, right? That means that the vast majority of the investment in the Bay Area and that something is just going into AI in some generic way. And yeah, everyone I talk to him talks about AI. Like these are all like huge indicators, and the way that the US economy right now, as an arbitrary example, is being propped up by money moving between a few very small companies, all of which is ultimately GPUs and training. From my perspective, yeah, we're in a bubble. I do completely agree though. Is AI going to make our products better over the long term? Absolutely. Does it change the fact we're still in the fundamentals of like delivering video, making sure video is better, making it more accessible? That stuff's not going to go away, and that stuff's always going to be made better. But our core business is still doing video. It's not like we are building Sora, right? Probably one of the most terrifying things that's come out this year. It's not like we're building Sora. It's not like we're building generative AI. It's not like we're burying billions and billions and billions of dollars into training new models. If we were, like, that's when you got affected by a bubble burst. I think leveraging these tools that other people are making, no, I don't think it's as impactful to us as a business.
Yeah, I agree very much. So AI turnarounds is, well, as a term, this is 56, right? And it has gone through a few different sort of periods, winter periods, where it sort of does this. I think we're in a period now where AI is not going away, right? Some of the use cases around it are bubble use cases, exactly what you were talking about having companies sort of having this circular sort of buying of chipsets and delivering solutions. That's what caused some of the concerns recently. But as a technology, it's not going anywhere, and it's sort of expanding. I mean, machine learning is over. If you're looking at churn, you're using machine learning. If you're targeting advertising, you're using machine learning, right? If you're doing video codec optimization, you're using deep learning, right? There's so many different pieces to this.
And I think as an industry overall, we haven't yet defined how AI is going to best serve us. And I think that's yet to come. I still think it's very early days for us, and there's a lot of trialing as to how we can best utilize it. So there's a lot of experimentation going on currently. But I think our end result really is to enhance the value of our existing content, and I think that's where AI is going to be best positioned.
To come on that. The only thing I would say is, at least from my point of view, so we, as kind of similar to Phil, like we're not building models or kind of doing whatever, like kind of using an array of like publicly available models. And as they are getting better, because they inevitably will be, and you kind of have to, effectively build for what's coming 2 or 3 models down the line, they are, because they're getting bigger and more complex, they require more compute power, and I feel like that's where the bottleneck is going to be, is in how much compute power, how much energy do we have for those, and so almost the advancement on that side is going to force the hardware side down so that the costs come down, because at the end of the day, if we're talking about agentic workflows, and we talk about people using ChatGPT today in their day-to-day workflows more than they did before. I've friends who are typically idiots who use ChatGPT to reply to Slack messages, but at that kind of level, or like having agentic workflows in day-to-day, that's more LLM usage, that's more GPU usage, so the usage rate's going through the roof, which means that the price needs to come down. So I'd say that's where the bubble is, but as Phil said, the use cases and how we're going to continue to use it isn't. That if anything, that's only going to explode more. Kind of what I was saying before, like we can do things that that would have taken an entire company to do quite easily nowadays with these models.
Thank you to our new moderator for a great question. We are running slightly over, but so very quickly, can I get each of you to give us your 2026 predictions for AI in media? Will Stefan Lederer be replaced by AI? Is AI the reason he cancelled all your Christmas parties?
It is not, because he didn't cancel our Christmas parties. He moved it to a big company get-together in January.
Same thing.
No, so I, to be blunt, who on earth knows? Talk to a bunch of other companies doing similar things, and it would be foolish to make a roadmap that's longer than 6 months to a year at the moment. Just at the, look at what Gemini 3.0 can do, look at what Sora can do versus look what Banana can do. Like, you couldn't have imagined that at the start of the year. So, like, it's only going to continue to blow out the water. From a media entertainment point of view, my only prediction is that it will start becoming more commonplace. The data and the extraction and kind of, I think that's, again, what I believe, it seems like what Josh believes and everyone believes here, is that more about how do we make the use of what exists rather than creating new stuff. I think that's going to be the trend going into next year.
Yeah, well said. I think 2026, AI will fade into the background more so and become more of a tool without you realizing, purely based on the fact that it's really going to be anticipating what you need next and paving the way for organic AI, essentially.
I mean, when you're talking about planning for a year, you can't even plan for a day. It's, OpenAI and then Google and then other little company. There's like 6 people that beat Google on something, right? Like within the next day, right? So it's, I think, and they were able to do it with, fewer resources, lower cost, things like that, just like you see with DeepSeek, sort of coming in and sort of going, all these people have spent a lot doing something, and then someone else is going to find a more efficient way of doing something. I think that's going to keep happening. And we're also seeing all of the regulatory stuff is tricky, right? There is no global regulation. The regulation that's in the EU is trying to protect human beings. I mentioned that. And yet there's debate between what happens with creatives, what happens with the big companies that want to be able to do whatever they want with anybody's data. Right? And then people who are just trying to sort of live and work and enjoy life and all of those things. And I think there's a lot of conflict going on in that space. And it's not going to be solved quickly. And that's going to keep going on, but we're going to keep moving forward at a really fast speed. Every time you think you know what's going on, something leapfrogs it the next day.
I just also remind. I agree with everything. Probably the one I think that's going to... It's been a conversation for a while. I remember 2019, someone I used to work with gave a great presentation at Defense about this, about deepfakes and content authenticity. The latest version of Sora is terrifying, and the tools you can get that remove the watermark from Sora are also terrifying. I may have accidentally sent my girlfriend an AI-generated video the other day on Instagram and didn't realize it. She was like, I think this is AI. And I was like, oh no! I think the video was definitely a cat doing something stupid.
Okay.
I was like, oh,
Of course it was.
Yes, nice AI. I think it was like a cat petting a raccoon or something. I was like, oh, they're best friends. It's not a real cat. Yeah, I think authenticity is going to become a huge thing. So it's if you look at the step forward on Sora this year, it can be like fooling to me, who has spent the last a long time geeking in AI stuff. So on top of everything else, it's just authenticity will become.
I love how we came full circle. Start talking about cats, finish on cats, almost like the rehearsal. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. That was really great. 10-minute break. When we be back for our final session. Double bump.